Welcome to Metrics That Matter. We will learn how to make sense of your fundraising data to make better decisions and raise more money with less effort. Brought to you by fundraisingreportcard.com, a simple and free analytics and reporting tool for nonprofit pros. Now measuring is easier than ever with fundraisingreportcard.com.
Episode 5, welcome.
What's this show called again?
It's Metrics That Matter. Yeah.
Yes. God, I love this podcast.
So what matters today, Zach?
Probably metrics. Probably some questions that some folks have called in with. Yeah, that probably sums it up. I think that's what matters to me today.
Okay.
And my coffee. My coffee this morning was delicious. I don't know about
Do
you.
you take it black or cream,
Just
sugar?
Cream.
Okay.
Stopped using sugar a long time ago, and I cannot recommend that enough.
Now, is it like 90% cream and then you have like a little shot of coffee in there?
I'm actually getting better about that. The other day, and this is quite the tangent to start out with.
Yeah.
The other day, I actually measured out what a serving of half and half is.
Okay.
Highly do not recommend.
See, on
doing
the no carb diet, I want like the full fat with no milk's
carbs.
got a lot of carbs, so
Yeah.
the more fat, the better.
You know what doesn't have a lot of carbs?
Butter.
Metrics.
Metrics. I was gonna say people put butter in their coffee. What's the?
Heard of?
Yeah, it's this. I forget what it's called.
Maybe if we get enough interest in a food-related podcast, we can kind of swing that here at Market
I like
Smart.
this,
I kind of doubt that happening.
That could be something. How to be more efficient with the good nutrition, being a fundraiser.
Being a fundraiser. What do we got today, Tim?
We got 2 questions today. First off, we have Terry from San Francisco called in to 575-815-4573, just like you can. And here is Terry's message.
Hi, Zach. It's Terry at First Graduate. Hope you're doing great. The question I have is, how can you help volunteers, especially board members, and guide them in discerning which data or which metrics really are important to look at and which ones they can let go of? Have you seen a series of common data across the board, or is it highly individualized to each organization? Thanks so much. Bye.
So great question. Thanks, Terry, for calling in. What are your thoughts here, Zach, on this one?
So I've actually had a chance to think about this one a little bit in advance of recording this for the show today. And Terry, it's great to hear your voice, and thank you so much for calling in. There's a few different points that I want to hit on. The first one is your notion of common data points that a board member or volunteers, and we'll stick with just the board member motif, might be interested in. And I actually, as of the date of recording this, published a blog post this morning talking about and providing a template for information that you should provide in your annual, or hopefully you're doing this more often, maybe a quarterly or semi-annual board meeting and board report in terms of which fundraising metrics you should share with the board. So there's a blog post that goes in depth, and I'll no shame in my game, I'll pull that up.
Yeah.
There's 3 different slides that I kind of recommend you have in terms of your development report. And again, this is for you, Terry, listening. This is just on those common pieces of information that you should share. We're going to go in a moment into not so common information, the ones that are more specific to the things that are going on at your organization.
In the common pieces of information, you're trying to tell a story to your board member. What story are we trying to tell with data, in this case, that's common across all organizations?
High-level health of the organization's fundraising, which when you really break it down is the high-level health of the financing of the organization. So most board members, in my experience over the past 4 years, are going to be really, really, really interested in the programs and the mission of the organization. They're not super interested about asking people for money. The reason they wanted to be a part of the organization's board is not because they're interested in asking people for money or tapping into their network to ask people for money. It's because they're aligned with the mission and they're aligned with the programs. So when you have this opportunity to engage with a board member or the board as a whole at a presentation, at some sort of meeting or retreat, your objective from a very high level and across every type of nonprofit organization should be, I'm going to give you a peek under the hood of the health of our operation, the health of our financing arm of the operation. People are inherently in this position not as interested in that because they want to hear about how many dogs did we have for adoption this past quarter, Or how many books did we send out? That is what is really going to be you're most passionate about. With that in mind, there are some key metrics, and we always talk about key metrics. But in this context, you've got maybe 5-10 minutes to present to your board. One of your slides should be a development overview or fundraising overview. And on that, we want to provide year-over-year context. The link to the blog post is fundraisingreportcard.com/nonprofit-board-presentation. And there's a link, as I talk through this, there's a link to an actual PowerPoint template with 3 slides that you can enter your own information into that will work well in your deck. But we want to give high-level overviews from last fiscal year and this fiscal year and the percentage change or the amount change.
Is this information being tracked efficiently where feeding this many children this year and here's how much it costs and if those rates are changing year to year? Is that something that's easily trackable across most organizations, or how does that?
I'm appreciative that you're bringing that up, and I promise, Terry, we'll get back to some of the crux of this in a moment. What you're alluding to are some of the program-related metrics. So a lot of organizations, a lot of the ones that I've had a chance to learn from and be a part of, either as a donor or helping in like an advisory role, that are grant funded, there are really, really steep requirements in terms of reporting back on that grant.
Yeah.
So the information that you just alluded to would be some program officer or some program associate sitting in Excel figuring that out, or hopefully, having some sort of system that does that for them. On the development side, we're not necessarily as concerned with the cost to feed the child or the cost to send the books. We're more concerned with maybe the cost per dollar raised, but even in this context of providing a high-level overview to the board, we're not even going to get that deep.
Okay.
We're going to stick with, here's the total amount of dollars we raised last year. Here's how much we raised this year. Here's how much it was up or down. Here's how many donations we had last year. Here's how many donation transactions we had this year. Here's how that affected average donation amounts last year and this year. And if you go through the post, there's 9 total metrics that I recommend that you put in a table. Mm-hmm. Last year, this year, year-over-year change. Very simple, super straightforward. How many new donors do we have? What's our donor retention rate? So on and so forth. That's slide 1.
Okay.
Slide 2 is where we start to segment and break down a little bit by type of contribution. So let's say you've got a special event that you run each year. You're working with a direct mail vendor. You have your bequests. You have gifts that have come in that are in lieu of someone or as a legacy contribution. This is where you're going to break out those revenues broken down by those different categories. And you want to show from last year to this year. Here's how much more money came in from the direct mail appeal. Here's how much less money came in from this event. And you want to walk through and just show, this is the total dollars raised, and here's how it broke out by our different types of giving.
This would be where donors would express which programs they really care about through their donations.
You're not explicitly saying, hey, we invested a lot in the golf gala. Golf gala, wow. The golf tournament and less in the gala. That's what I meant to say. But you'll be able to see in the numbers that that's what we did do, and this was the effect. You're not saying it explicitly, but you're just showing the numbers to give some context. Mm-hmm. This is also going to help if you've received a large bequest or something like that, breaking it out to show, hey, this was a little bit of an anomaly, but it's something that we would like to have more legacy gifts. Or maybe you're going into a campaign or in a campaign, you can break out what are campaign contributions versus unrestricted contributions just to the operating budget.
And in these charts, you'll show probably a color coding where these were below $1,000 donations and this huge amount appears just from a couple people.
So using the charts and graphs is good. Obviously, built the whole tool around charts and graphs. In this context, even a table, you're fine. As long as in that table you've got the delineator of what is what and the dollar amounts associated with each. You're golden for this context of providing just some common overview, a little bit of a breakdown information.
Yeah.
The next layer deep would be breaking it down by giving level or using some visualizations to try and understand trends over time. In this context with these board members, just show them. This is going up, this is going down.
Okay.
Third slide. Third slide is what everyone always wants to have all their slides about. It's the successes that they've had. So I call this almost like the donor relations slide. This is going to be the slide where you're talking about how well you've been building relationships with your base and also which initiatives you've put in place that have garnered success over the past 12 months or 6 months. So for example, a lot of organizations, Tim, that work with us here at MarketSmart, and their board reports are saying, we did a qualification survey with a new vendor, MarketSmart, our new partner, MarketSmart, and we uncovered 32 unknown legacy gifts. That is on this 5-minute or 10-minute slide 3, donor relations slide, successes we've had, initiatives we've undertaken. If you've done something over the past 6-12 months, like implemented a new welcome series for all new donors, put that on this slide. If you've sent a thank you note to everyone that had ever donated in the past 12 months, put that on this slide. You're trying to show 3 to 5 initiatives, things you've invested not only financially, but your time in, that have boosted the way you're building relationships with your constituency. So you got 2 slides on metrics, 1 slide on successes we've had. That's kind of this common realm. Now, to Terry's other point, which is, Terry, you didn't explicitly say this, but the thought that came through my mind is common is good, but it's not necessarily what's most poignant and important at your organization. In that vein, when it comes to data and metrics, and Tim's going to have a smile on his face when I say this, you need to align your key performance indicators with your, ready for another acronym, your OKRs. Your objectives and your key results. Yeah. So what have you been working towards the past 6-12 months? And what are the key indicators that would show you're making progress in that direction? What are your objectives and what are your key results? Those then, Terry, would be what you're also presenting and sharing with the board member. I'll try and make something up on the top of my head here. It might not be the greatest, but our objective may be to raise more money than we ever have before. Mm-hmm. A key result of that may be to increase donor retention rate from 42% to 46%. Because we know if we increase donor retention rate, we're going to retain more dollars. So you would present to your board, and this is an obvious and a common one as well, but you would present to your board, maybe your segmented donor retention rates and your overall donor retention rate. Mm-hmm. We were able to increase new donor retention rate by 5 basis points, which ended up increasing our overall donor retention rate by 2 basis points. Can get a little bit more granular, but you're almost like connecting this hierarchy of what is the organization's OKR or goal, and then how did that take effect in your day-to-day, your month-to-month, and how can you relay that information to your leadership?
Okay, makes sense. Yeah.
Good question, Terry.
This episode is brought to you by us here at MarketSmart and the Fundraising Report Card. What is the Fundraising Report Card? Well, it's a free service offered at fundraisingreportcard.com that enhances your fundraising efforts with easy-to-use analytics and charts. Get your proposals approved faster by using these beautiful and elegant charts created automatically with fundraisingreportcard.com. You'll also find a great blog that dives deep into what data means for your organization and how you can use it effectively to make smarter decisions. Start learning and start generating beautiful charts by going to fundraisingreportcard.com. Now back to Metrics That Matter.
Next up, we have Patricia from New Hampshire, called in to 575-815-4573. Just like you can, here's Patricia's message.
Hi, this is Patricia Mack, Director of Development at Southeastern New Hampshire Habitat for Humanity. My question is, in determining the critical metrics for an organization, do you make a distinction in collecting this data between smaller and larger nonprofit organizations? Thanks.
Thanks, Patricia. Great question.
That never gets old. I love listening to people that have called in. So thank you, Patricia. Really appreciate you calling in. Okay, a few thoughts here. First one being, yes, there is an obvious distinction between what's going to be measured at a small, maybe grassroots nonprofit organization versus a large, incredibly robust institution. Now, the fundamentals don't change. The idea that we're measuring key metrics that align with the organization's objectives, and we're measuring some of those common metrics, that doesn't change. The level of depth and robustness that we're able to accomplish, that absolutely changes.
Because, for instance, I would imagine at a smaller nonprofit, those low-level donations would be less effective than, say, a big organization. Like, big organizations, if they have a crap ton of these low-level donors,
Is that the technical term?
Yeah, that's a technical term, yeah. They'll be more of a positive effect in their bottom line than, say, an organization that doesn't have as much, right? Or am I wrong there?
No, yeah. I don't necessarily want to say you're wrong there. I think it's a mixture of the kind of cohorts of giving that you have at a small shop. So a lot of smaller dollar donors potentially, or maybe a small subset of major donors that are your primary revenue sources at a small shop versus maybe at a big academic institution. You've got a robust alumni pool, you've got athletic specific giving, you've got college-specific giving. So there are different cohorts, and that plays a role. I also really think it almost like a tooling and a time differentiator. At a larger, more robust institution, you're going to have more advanced tools and you're going to have more man hours dedicated towards mining data and mining information. Whereas at a smaller shop, you might have Excel or maybe you're using the free fundraising report card, and you might have an hour a week that you can sneak away to try and crunch some numbers.
And that man hours come in both in analyzing this data, but also executing on what the data tells you. So at a larger shop, you could have more granular campaigns that are targeting your different audiences versus a smaller shop where that would be much more challenging to implement.
I remember I was at the N10 conference, the Nonprofit Technology Conference, NTC, when it was here in Washington, D.C. So I guess that was 16 or 17. I sat in on a presentation about millennial giving because I was really jaded because I'm a millennial and thought, what do I know? One of the women that was on the panel discussion, she was like SVP, Senior Vice President of Digital Outreach Marketing or something like that. But it was a fundraising title. She was at Livestrong.
Big organization,
Big, robust organization. And that's when the sentiment that you're sharing right now, Tim, kind of clicked in my mind. She was talking about A/B testing for millennial profiles and things like that. And there were so many people in the room that worked at land trusts.
Yeah.
Like the Winaki Land Trust. And they're thinking to themselves, I'm never going to A/B test anything. I'm never going to... my key metric is never going to be the conversion rate differentiator between my A test and my B test to my 5,000 pool audience for my graphic design banner ad that changed one variable.
Right. No.
So at a large, robust organization, you're deviating away from those common metrics that we talked about, and you're getting into these very specific retention rate of segment A versus segment B, or average donation amount of cohort A versus cohort B. And if you really think about it, one way that I like to put it into perspective, and I hope this is answering your question, Patricia, let's say you're an individual working on a project. And let's say you come into the office or you work from home, whatever it may be. You put in your 8 hours a day and you're working towards accomplishing that project. There's 8 hours each day going towards that. Now, in reality, let's say you're able to dedicate 30 minutes each day of your 5-day work week towards that effort of analyzing data or something like that. You got 2.5 hours a week going towards analyzing metrics. At a big, robust institution, let's say they've got 50 full-time staff that every day just come in there and think about number crunching. 50 times 8, there's 400 hours a day.
Right, yeah.
There's 2,000 hours a week just thinking about crunching numbers and getting to the bottom of different, hypotheses and things along those lines. Now, of course, there's pros and cons of being at a large, more bureaucratic institution. Things might move a little bit slower than what you're able to accomplish on your own.
Yeah.
The answer here to your question, Patricia, is there's the core and common metrics, similar to what we just described with Terry's question. And we've written extensively, and I've written extensively in the Data-Driven Fundraisers Reference Guide about kind of core metrics, common metrics organizations should look at. But then when it comes to the next layer down, so aligning your core metrics with your OKRs, your objectives and key results, there's a level of depth that you'll be able to get to at a small shop.
Yeah.
And then there's an even deeper level that you'll be able to get to when you're at University of Maryland, right up the street.
Question. This is Habitat for Humanity. This is New Hampshire kind of division of it. Is there anything that he said for these organizations talk to the different sects within this larger nonprofit? Is there data that can be utilized from that angle of things?
Great question. My experience, Tim, is that a lot of these national nonprofits with regional offices, unfortunately, for better or worse, probably for worse, have not great relationships with the parent office. Obviously, on an individual by individual basis, that will change.
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of regional Habitat for Humanities. The amount of data sharing or man-hour sharing across those organizations, I haven't seen a ton of.
Okay.
There's a great story in Steve McLaughlin's book, Data-Driven Nonprofits, where he talks about public broadcasting stations in the Massachusetts area, Boston, Massachusetts, New England, that went on, I think it was in the early 2000s, and started this data sharing program between public television stations. And they ended up having great results from sharing their key metrics and sharing best practices. So that is something that a Habitat for Humanity, a Salvation Army, a Girl Scouts USA type organization could benefit from. it takes a lot of congruence from the parent organization to and back and forth through those local affiliates. And unfortunately, in my experience, I haven't seen a ton. Patricia, tell me I'm wrong and tell me you're doing some data sharing and sharing of best practices. That'd be great. But to come back to the crux of this, you've got common metrics small shops and big shops look at, and then you've got a layer of depth that you really can't get to, nor should you be if you're at a very small shop.
Because your time is valuable. You got to spend it.
If you're spending your 40 hours a week trying to, run A/B tests for millennial donors at your land trust, you're not doing the right thing. You are super busy. You don't even need me to tell you that. But if you're hired as a senior data analyst at Livestrong, cool. That's what you do day in and day out. You're going to get a little deeper into the weeds. There's pros and cons that come from that.
Great. Anything else you want to say before we wrap it up here?
I don't think so, Tim. I think really appreciate people bringing their questions to us and looking forward to answering some more.
Yeah. The right answer, Zach, is said you should be calling it 575-815-4573, just like Terry and Patricia did. And we really do appreciate all the calls that have come in and would love some more. So thanks, Zach, for your time today. And thank you to you, the listener, for spending your time with us and listening to this podcast.
See you next time.